it's Reagan, and today I'm here to bring you my September wrap-up. I'm all snuggly-wuggly in my new cream sweater, and I got my fall lip on. I'm ready for this video. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. This month I read a total of 5 books. I really enjoyed every single one of them, and the stack is deceptively short-looking because a lot of them were actually pretty long. So again, pretty proud of myself. The first book I completed this month was Sourdough by Sloane. This is Sloane's newest release, and you might be aware of his other novel, Mr. Penumbrum's 24-Hour Bookstore. This is a very charming yet peculiar novel. It follows our main character Lois, who lives in San Francisco and spends her day and most of her nights working at her job where she programs robotic arms to take over human tasks. She feels that she kind of lives a very solitary existence. She's pretty depressed as she feels like she spends most of her time working and she doesn't really have a lot of passion. One day she gets a mysterious menu from a local delivery restaurant. She orders their soup and their bread and she absolutely falls in love. However, one day this cafe decides to move on, but they gift Lois, their #1 customer, with their sourdough bread starter, which is kind of like this gross yeasty thing that's used to create sourdough bread. From there, Lois becomes incredibly passionate about bread making, and it kind of sends her on this journey where she kind of uncovers that passion. However, there is a very peculiar element of the story. Essentially, the bread she starts to bake have faces baked into them, like bread faces. This is an incredibly charming story. We follow Lois and you can't help but to root for her and just like want her to find happiness. I'm also really into bread baking and also just the hobby itself. So this was definitely a book I enjoyed reading from that. It really explained all the processes of bread making and all of that, and it just made me very hungry and excited. This also has some very strange elements that kind of take you by surprise, but also feel like they should be a part of this novel. Overall, I was just really taken away by this short little narrative. It was a wonderful tale about Lois, and I don't know, it centered around bread baking and passion. It was just a really enjoyable read, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed this month was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. Now this is the parallel story that takes place at the same time as Empire Storms, but follows our other character Kale, who hasn't been really present in the main storyline for the past couple books. When I first heard about this book, got this book, picked up this book to read, I was incredibly hesitant. I've definitely not loved the past 2 installments of Throne of Glass. Obviously Kale for a long time was one of my favorite characters, and he just hasn't been present in the main storyline, but with that his character was also kind of like ruined by some of his actions. So to say I was hesitant to pick this up is definitely an understatement. I did also want to quickly say that even before I read this book does deal with a lot of disability representation, specifically wheelchair representation, and before I even read this book I did read a few own voices reviews about this because I really wanted to be grounded in that before I even picked this book up. So I'm gonna link those reviews down below. But like I said, this is Kale's novel and it follows him as a political ambassador throughout the story, and I loved this book. It's really hard to tell you what's happening and what's going on without spoiling a lot of Throne of Glass, so I have to tread a very careful line here. Just enjoyed this so immensely. I just feel like Sarah J. Maas's talent lies in creating anticipation between relationships. You just read on and read on because you were just on the edge of your seat waiting for things to happen. You are just sucked in. I was addicted to this story. Kale's character I felt like had a very impressive and very interesting and admirable arc. She did a lot of things that surprised me with his character and I really appreciated seeing in this story. Additionally, I really felt like it cracked open the world of Throne of Glass as this takes place in a whole different kingdom than we have ever been present in, which I actually really enjoyed. I want more from these characters, more from this world, and I hopefully will get some of that in the future. I really enjoyed this story. In fact, I feel like this is my favorite Throne of Glass installment book since like Queen of Shadows. I loved it. I loved all of the characters in this, which I can't say the same for Throne of Glass, and it was such an enjoyable read. Can't articulate enough how surprised I was by it. Loved it so much. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Well, I have nothing. It was great. You really should pick it up if you're on the fence about it. Next book I read was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is One Dark Throne by Kendar Blake. This is the delicious dark sequel to 3 Dark Crowns, which I feel like I talk about all the time, but it is a magical island about 3 sisters who have to kill each other to take over the throne. Magic is involved. This is the sequel. I was actually kind of nervous picking this up because I don't know, I feel like I've hyped it up so much for myself personally. I also just love the first book so much, I just felt like this was doomed to disappoint me. Happy to report, it did not. I absolutely loved this. I flew through it. Just the character nuances in this is just so amazing, and obviously the first book ended on quite the cliffhanger, picked right up after that, and it was just so interesting to see how the three sisters characters diverged from the first story and also carried on some of the character development we saw at the end of the book. It was just so impressive. I just love this world and everything about it. It's just so interesting and dark. I'm not even quite sure where the story is gonna go from here, but the unexpected of that is just making me even more interested to pick up the next book in this series, as I think there's going to be another one, but like I said, I don't know when. This book hit me in the feels, it hit me in the emotions, and I loved it so much. 5 out of 5 stars. Next book I picked up was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was technically a reread for me, but I have to say, reading this book, I realized rather quickly that I forgot a lot of what happened as I read this book like 2 years ago, and I'm happy to report, again, this is the third time this has happened to me this year, I liked it better the second time than the first time. This is Victoria Schwab's adult fantasy novel following a few different main characters, but is essentially set in a world where there are parallel Londons. There's Grey London that has no magic, there's Red London that has an abundance of magic, there's white magic that is all about like ruling through power and the magic is dying, and then there's Black London, which no one can get to or talk about. This follows one of our main characters, Kel, who can jump between all of these parallel Londons. It's an adventure story, it's a lovely story full of magic, whimsy, and honestly it was just a heartwarming tale. It felt very much like a classic fantasy adventure story, like we didn't have a huge focus on like romantic relationships or anything like that, which I really liked. But instead it was truly focused on the magic and the tale and the adventure and getting from point A to point B, and it was such a wonderful ride and journey that I can't wait to continue on with the rest of this series, as I feel like it's gonna get even more complicated with each book. Additionally, I feel like there's some fantastic opportunities for some gray morality present in this series, which I feel like Victoria Schwab is the master at. All of the characters in this world that I already love, I feel like I'm going to love even more and maybe hate a little bit moving forward. At the end of the day, I thought this was such a clever and smart and just a great time for a book to read, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was great. It was great. And the final book I completed this month was the Perustopia Book Club Pick of the Month for the month of October, and that was Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This is a YA contemporary Cinderella retelling that is heavily influenced by fandom and fandom culture. This is a dual perspective contemporary novel, first following our main character Elle, who is obsessed with this science fiction series. And unfortunately for Elle, her parents have passed away, and this particular science fiction series is one of the main ways that she remembers and honors their memory. Elle now lives with her stepmother and her mean stepsisters, and she sees a cosplay competition at a local con as a way to escape the life that she's just been unhappy with for a very long time. The other main character we follow is Darian, and he has just recently been cast as the main character of this sci-fi reboot, and these two characters somehow start becoming in contact with each other. We got a you got mail situation. This book was just honestly really cute. It was a little cheesy, but honestly I was expecting that going in. I don't know, a Cinderella fandom science fiction retelling, like I was expecting it to be a little cheesy, but it was the kind of cheesy where I just had a smile plastered on my face for the entire time. I thought the Cinderella elements were very clever. The author did a great job with transforming them to the 21st century in a way that didn't feel inauthentic or like, okay, yeah, that's the pumpkin. It was like clever, and it was fun to kind of figure out like, oh, that's the fairy godmother, oh, that's the pumpkin, oh, this and that. It was a really well done story. It was very well crafted. Obviously the fandom elements was something that I personally really enjoyed and I found to be very relatable, and I can imagine a lot of you guys can find that relatable as well. I've actually done a full non-spoiler review of this book, which I'll leave linked down below, but overall I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was very, very cute, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I read this month in September. I had, in my opinion, a really good reading month. I really loved a lot of the books I picked up, and I can't wait to hopefully continue on the trend next month. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!